Hey, I see a familiar soul there. Hi, Michael.
Hey Pete, nice to see you.
Yeah, Michael and I were in the FMCS becoming a labor arbitrator class last June. So it's nice to see you again, Michael.
Same here.
And congratulations on your contribution with the national LERA
Oh
meeting
yeah,
coming up soon.
yeah. Thanks. It should be a good meeting, and looking forward to it. Thanks for
Great.
having me.
Pete, are you becoming an arbitrator?
That is eventually part of my career plan. Yes.
Great career choice.
Thank you. And
Josh is
Michael's been doing it the last year, from what I understand. So.
Josh is just like, not yet. Wait.
Yeah, no, that's, we're gonna have to have a conversation after this, Mr. Hanlon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, our facilitator today is Josh Norris. I think we all know Josh from the people I have on the screen, so I will not do any formal introductions of Josh. He selected the topic today, and we'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Josh.
Sure, thanks, Mita. Thanks, everybody, for getting on. It really is an honor to have anybody think that my opinion matters at all, so I appreciate that. But I thought, I don't know how many of you are from Ohio or around the country, but the topic I suggested, and Mita was like, oh, that's controversial. That'll definitely engage in some conversation. And from my understanding of what LERA is, it's a place with light but no heat, is the way Bernadette, I think, explained it earlier. So without further ado, I would like to discuss the perception of the State Employment Relations Board amongst the advocates who have to go in front of SERB, and our allegations of unfair labor practices, the dismissal of unfair labor practices. And I just want to put it out there, in certain circles, there is a very strong belief, and it's majority union circles, that SERB is not an effective mechanism to address unfair labor practices. There's a very real belief that the decision is already made. And I wanted to see if, is that the perception from everyone? Is that the belief that everyone holds? And I appreciate the fact Mr. Geis is here from SERB, because I'd like to hear their perception and their thoughts also. I just know every union advocate that I speak with, when we're dealing with Ohio, when we're dealing with things that come down from the state to any public sector chapter or entity, is, oh, well, that's an unfair labor practice. We'll file, and it's almost a chuckle after that, because the belief is it's pre-decided and there will be no one will address it. It'll get dismissed for one reason or another, and you're left. I know I recently had a few that just left me scratching my head saying, wait, this is identical to the fact pattern in this case where there was probable cause, or that's a misinterpretation or a misreading of the statute. How do we, so I guess I wanted to be a little bit selfish with this conversation too, and ask for some thoughts or input from others. Has that been your experience? And if not, how do we address that moving forward? How do we get rid of that perception in Ohio amongst labor unions and amongst the labor community?
So I guess the first question would be, has anyone filed an unfair labor practice through SERB? Or does it arise, there's sometimes I know that I see that arising in arbitrations as well. And generally speaking, you'll have the authority deferring to the arbitrator on the grievance to resolve that.
Right. And I see that happen quite a bit with charges that we file with the National Labor Relations Board in the private sector. If there's a grievance that's on subject also and the collective bargaining agreement refers to it, the NLRB will often defer to arbitration but maintain jurisdiction, waiting for the outcome of the arbitration decision to see if they agree with it or not. And I've had that happen quite a bit. I've not had that happen through CERB in recent history. Any charge that I've filed, and I'm going back, I want to say even 2010, 2009, from the Kasich administration on, has been dismissed for lack of probable cause. And the decisions just don't seem to make sense in my mind, and with the people that I review them with. I talk with our union attorneys, I talk with others in the labor industry on the union side, and there's a lot of, well, that doesn't make any sense, or that question wasn't even posed to CERB. Why did they answer that this way? I mean, the most recent one and that happened this year was with adult parole authority and body worn cameras, and whether or not the state had an obligation to bargain over those. And there was a Sharonville case from 2020 where the city of Sharonville implemented cameras, and CERB found probable cause and ordered the parties to negotiate over the implementation of those cameras. While with the body worn cameras for parole officers, CERB dismissed and said that the state had met their requirement to bargain with the union, when the state admittedly said, we did not bargain with the union. We listened to their feedback and their suggestions and provided them with information, but we did not negotiate because we don't believe it's a mandatory subject. And the decision from CERB was, well, we believe that the state has met their obligation to negotiate by meeting with the union, conferring, providing information, and allowing feedback. But that doesn't meet the statutory definition of bargaining under 4117. And so those are the types of decisions that leave us in the labor world scratching our head, wondering, how do we enforce what's already in statute, and why are there inconsistent decisions being delivered? Has anybody else had experience with any of this, or am I just the black sheep that this seems to happen to?
Now I know Rita comes from the federal sector, retired from the federal sector, right?
Yes,
Rita?
yes, I do. And from the
Okay.
federal sector, the biggest problem was, for the longest time, there wasn't a full complement in the FLRA. We couldn't get anything litigated through. And there's just recently been appointments to put a full complement now on the board. And from what I understand, with the most recent appointments that go through presidential, Senate and presidential process for approval, there should be not only swifter ability to move through the process, but that there is likely going to be much more of a receptive audience to labor side of issues, so that employees will get an opportunity to actually have grievances heard fairly. So should be a change significantly.
Yeah, I see that, and I appreciate that, Rita. I see that with private sector cases with the National Labor Relations Board pretty consistently, and have seen an increase in staffing and some change in the way things are happening there.
Yeah. For years, ULPs would just languish for
Right.
literally for years with just no movement.
Yeah, and CERB's
Black hole.
process, yeah, CERB's process, they don't languish, they don't, I mean, you get responses, you get feedback, you get decisions. The board puts them on their agenda, they have their meetings, and it's the dismissals that are concerning, you know, when you're just left scratching your head. And so that's why I thought this would be a good topic this is a safe place. I'm not looking for any more friends or any more enemies than I already have. It's just, I wanted to engage the conversation because it really is what the perception and belief is amongst union advocates, that you, regardless of what the issue is, regardless of what happened, there will not be a probable cause finding from CERB against the state of Ohio.
Yeah, Josh, I know I've had a couple where I've filed against public libraries in Ohio on behalf of administrative organizers with SEIU. And I've kind of run into the same issue. I think one was about a dress code and the other was about bargaining about a position that they were adding to their table of organization. And both, you know, CERB found no probable cause. And like you said, kind of left us scratching our heads as well.
Right. And I know, I appreciate that, Pete. Yeah, that's been my experience. I know that there's the opportunity through motion for reconsideration, but it goes back to the same individuals that made the original decision. I've not had any luck going that route also. And my genuine concern is that this erodes the bargaining process. This erodes unions' rights to negotiate over what are mandatory subjects. And while I know CERB doesn't have to adopt everything that the labor board has said and doesn't follow in the footsteps of the NLRB, there are several cases on point that I cite when I file the ULPs or file the motions for reconsideration that do mirror what NLRB has said in regards to mandatory subjects and obligations to negotiate, and those are dismissed as well. So, yeah, how many of every? Oh, okay, go ahead, Ray.
Kind of an awkward position. It's a pleasure to see you in person, sir.
Yeah,
I'm sure this will be a robust discussion. Some of you know that I do work for CERB. I work in the hearing as an administrative law judge. So I'm not any of the decisions upon whether there's probable cause that an unfair labor practice charge has been committed. That's really the echelon of the general counsel in the investigation section, and they decide whether there's probable cause. And then of course the general counsel issues a complaint. And it's at that point that I might be assigned to a case. And I just wanted to say, well, number one, I'm not authorized to speak for CERB today. I'm hearing you. It's interesting what you're saying. I'm not going to comment to that. But a couple things that I noticed you say. Well, you know, there are standards, and you know, CERB gets to investigate the issue of unfair labor practices, and it's under an abuse of discretion standard. So once upon a time, when I was on the union side, I actually, before I became a neutral, I actually did get my union counsel to file an action in mandamus to suggest that CERB had abused their discretion. And it is a hard standard. I ended up losing in the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio, but there are examples out there that you know, CERB isn't unfettered. We have to follow rules, whether it be on the investigative side and certainly on the hearing side. So I'll just, you know, say to you or remind you that, you know, if that's the way you feel, then sometimes, you know, it may be in your best interest to go to a higher court and have that decision reviewed, whether it's under a deferential standard with respect to an unfair labor practice charge, or whether it's under a less deferential standard for a proposed order that becomes a final order of the board that's subject to hearing. So I just wanted to kind of remind you that those avenues are out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah,
CERB operates under you know, constraints just like any other agency does. So it is a little bit awkward for me to be in this, and I hope you won't hold it against me. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave discussion today because I just think that the rest of the participants probably could have a freer discussion. Again, I'm not really permitted to officially comment on any SERB proceedings, and so I wouldn't be of any value to you in that regard. But I do appreciate that you are trying to have robust discussions about these matters. I can tell you that me and my colleagues, we do love our work, and we try very hard. And I think if you looked at some of my opinions, I would hopefully think you'd see that I try to consider things in a very thoughtful way and in a very neutral way. But again, everyone's entitled to their agreement or disagreement. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I wish you all a great weekend, and be well.
Yeah, and I
Thank you,
appreciate that, Ray. And before you go, I just want to qualify what I'm saying. I want no one to walk away from this conversation thinking that I'm identifying any one individual or anything like that. That's the furthest thing from my intention. So I appreciate your feedback and your advice. And I understand it could put you in an uncomfortable position, and it's not nothing said here from at least my perspective is going any further than here. It's to have the engagement and have the conversation, and even explore thoughts from arbitrator Ellis or Bass or others on here as to what their perception is or how they look at things when things like this come in front of them. Do they rely solely on what SERB has said, or do they look at the law and then make their own decision? So, but I certainly can appreciate what you said, Mr. Geis. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and no offense taken in any way. And I know you do everything in a professional atmosphere of dialogue. So again, be well, take care, everyone, and I'm sure we'll see you around for the next meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ray.
Bye-bye.
Before Ray got off, he was suggesting that there's a process to follow, Josh. Say if you disagree with that, the decisions of SERB.
Yeah.
Although they're making these independent decisions on their own, there's still a process that you can appeal those decisions.
Right. And that's another hurdle. I mean, I think that's another conversation. My intention is not to just throw rocks at SERB all day for an hour. It's to see, am I on an island? I mean, I know there's members from OCSEA here. Is this the perception and reality that others face, or is this just something where I'm just a crazy one and I'm doing something wrong? I want to hear what others' experiences have been and have some conversation around it.
Sorry, I thought I thought Jenny was going to chime in because she turned off her.
I was. I was trying to get my. I'm like Josh. I don't want to chuck rocks at SERB, for an hour. But
I would agree with Josh. I mean,
I do too.
Our position at OCSEA is we're never going to get anything out of SERB, and it's a waste of time for us to file there. And even when we feel like we've got a rock solid case, we get, no probable cause. And so, Josh, we're feeling your pain too. And there's got to be, some mechanism for us to figure out how we are able to review that, because, it has been a systemic problem that we're dealing with SERB. So I agree with you. And, we just got another no PC from SERB last week, and we're like, well, welcome to it. We weren't shocked. Here it is.
Right.
But before we continue, Josh, wait a minute. Bernadette, can you turn off the recording? This is one of those sessions we won't record. And if